All right, so this is my second attempt to teach this lesson on the Civil War. I believe the first attempt was met with a lot of skepticism, and I'm guessing that the vast majority didn't understand the economic analysis. So to them, it's just like a bunch of psychobabble and lack credibility. So I'm going to hold off on that for last. I'll try to keep it, to the simple nuts and bolts, to simple bean counting early on. All right, and I'll go to the economic analysis last. Um, Also, I want to break this up into smaller chunks. Uh, Maybe make it a less, you know, exhausting for you to go through the whole lecture. All right, so um, this is the second lesson. The first lesson, we established that the Civil War was not fought to free the slaves. All right. Now, I believe we must do a review because no doubt most retained little or nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying that because that's the way it is. Right. People are not going to retain the facts. But keep in mind, a quick review cannot replace all the detailed analysis I gave already. But, we got to give something here. So here's a quick superficial summary of the proof that the Civil War was not fought to free the slaves. All right. So first thing is, the North didn't start the war to free the slaves. The South started the war, and there was no threat to slavery. All right. People say, well, because the South said so, there must have been. Right? Well, you look, there's no real tangible threat to slavery. All right. Okay. The Northern government did the exact opposite of fighting a war to free the slaves. Right? They did everything they could to avoid a war, and to do so, they protected and promoted slavery. So they protected, guaranteed you could have slavery forever in the Constitution, and they promoted slavery. We'll expand your slave territory in a desperate attempt to avoid war. Right? So how do they do that? Well, they pass a Corwin Amendment, which is an amendment to the Constitution which gave constitutional perpetual protection to slavery. Right? There would be no amendment to change this. Offered New Mexico territory as a slave state. Right? That's Arizona and New Mexico. That's expanding slavery. That's not fighting slavery. Offered to beef up the Fugitive Slave Act. Right? That's not trying to fight slavery, help slaves escape. That's sending them back down, back to their slavery. Right? They did so by preventing interference by local law, making federal law the sole jurisdiction. Right? Among other things, they did some other things. And they passed a Crittenden-Johnson resolution vowing that the war would not be fought to free the slaves. The war will be fought to preserve the Union. All right. So they passed a resolution guaranteeing that. Okay. Now, so many people say, well, Lincoln was going to free the slave. Well, how is Lincoln going to free the slave? He's not the Congress. He doesn't make laws, right? And in any event, he was dead against freeing the slaves, and that meant war. Lincoln's prime number one objective was to maintain the Union together, right? Avoid a split and avoid a subsequent war. And so he led the charge. He led the charge to promote and protect slavery to appease the South. He was the originator of the Corwin Amendment, getting Senator Seward to ramrod that through Congress. He pushed for the beefing up of the fugitive slave laws, right? And then just read his inaugural address, his whole inaugural address. What's the purpose of it? To preserve the Union, right? That's his number one primary goal, right? And he's gonna throw slaves under the bus to do so. All right. But he did say, to his credit, he did say, he said, "Hey, if there's a free black man in the North, you can't come up here and steal him, right? Take him to the South and make him a slave." I mean, which is happening, right? Okay. All right, so of course the South didn't go for it, right? What does that mean, right? So you offered all this protection, you offered to expand slavery. The South is saying, "Oh, they're going to free the slaves. They're going to free." North's like, "What? No one's trying to free the slaves. In fact, we'll guarantee the protection of slavery forever for you, right? Just don't fight a war. Don't split the union." Did the South go for it? No. So what does that mean, right? That wasn't their motive. They had deeper, bigger motives, right? I mean, come on. And in 1860, there was not an ounce of legislative threat to slavery. Right? There's no threat to slavery. Right? Slavery is written into the Constitution. What does that mean? You have to have an amendment to the Constitution to get rid of slavery. And that's why the 13th Amendment was important. All right, so in 1865, right, the North, by itself, in Congress, no southern states, barely passed the 13th Amendment by only 2 votes. And that was with Lincoln twisting arms and buying votes, right? With all sorts of different payoffs. Okay, pardons and I don't forget what Goodwin said. She was talking about pardons and promises of federal jobs and stuff like that. He's trying to buy votes. All right, so zero threat, right? So there's no emancipation bill in Congress. Right. Well, how are you gonna get rid of? How are you gonna change the Constitution when there's not even a bill, right? In committee, let alone on the floor. Even if there was a bill, there wasn't. There was no chance it would pass. Right. It passed by only 2 votes with only northern states. And again, Lincoln had to buy votes and make that happen. So the northern states themselves barely wanted it. Right. They had to be twisted into it. Right? Before the war, with the southern states voting, there was zero chance it would pass if it were a bill. Right? Before the war, right, the North would never have introduced such a bill because they're dead against going to war, and this would cause a war. I mean, this is proven by all the things they did to bend over backwards to protect and promote slavery. Right? You think they wanted the war? It's proven they're desperate to prevent a war. Why would they introduce a bill that's going to cause a war? And then finally, the amendment had zero chance of ratification because it required 26 of the 34 states to ratify it, which means only 9 of the 15 states had to vote against it, and they're all going to vote against it. Why? Because they're all slave states. What do you think they're going to do? Right? We're going to vote to get rid of slavery because that's going to, we want to destroy our economy. Okay. All right. So the people in the North did not want to fight to free the slaves, right? First and foremost, they were focused on their own interest. I mean, that's human nature, right? For example, when the war started, you think they rushed to free the slaves? Oh yeah, okay, let's free the slaves now. Hell no, right? They kept that for the last hour, right? All right, especially after the 1864 election. I won't get into that. But what did they rush to do? They rushed immediately to get their economic agenda in. Why? Because this is going to serve their interests. This is what's on the hot burner for them, right? Second, their fierce opposition to slavery in their own state, right? I mean, you know the people in the North were dead set against slavery in their state, right? Why? Because they wanted to help the blacks. Oh hell no, man! Look at the Constitution of Oregon State, right? Hey, we're not going to have slavery in our state. Right after that, it says we're not going to have black people in our state. You think they're not having slavery to help the blacks? It's about their own self-interest. In a way, so does not in any way mean they're willing to suffer, fight, and die to eliminate slavery in some other state, which they can give a damn about, right? It's their state, their opportunities. They're protecting their jobs, their wages, land opportunity, right? All right. I mean, this is their overall opportunity, right? This is their chances at life. Plus, there was widespread prejudice against blacks, including state laws. That's institutional racism. 4 states had laws saying, no blacks in our state. You can't even come to visit, right? No blacks allowed in our state. No blacks could vote. 6 states had that. Many more states had black code laws, those highly restrictive, prejudicial laws against blacks, right? I mean, come on. You think with all that, oh yeah, we're gonna go fight to free these guys. Many wanted slaves to remain slaves because that served the best interest. That's true. A lot of them, I don't know exact numbers, but a lot of people were afraid that, man, you let the slaves free, they're going to come up here and compete with us for our jobs. They're going to take our jobs, right? Many feared blacks would come north and take their jobs. Merchants, like in New York City, and textile manufacturers, like textile factory owners, feared loss of profits from rising cotton prices without slavery. They wanted to maintain slaves because they get cheap cotton, right? All right, abolitionists. Okay, so then a lot of people say, well, the abolitionist movement drove it. Man, the abolitionists were not a powerful, influential group. They were small in number, ignored by the Republican Party, and they did not want war to free slaves. Most of these guys were centered upon, like the northeastern Christian groups, right? They're like, man, this is immoral, right? Right? But so is war, right? We don't want to go to war, right? They're hoping they get some legislation to someday to free them. All right, now John Brown. John Brown, right, was not a major figure driving emancipation. John Brown is an exaggeration. He is a historical distortion, right? John Brown was an insignificant anomaly who did not represent the masses, nor did he inspire a following, right? So he's not driving a big movement here, right? Plus, he had no impact in his trivial failed attempt at Harper's Ferry, killed 5 people, rampaged for about, a day and a half. That's it, 36 hours, day and a half, right? Then he's tried, he's arrested, he's tried, he's hung. Okay, great. That dies, right? Wow. You know, who makes this a big part of our history? It's like who gets to decide this crazy stuff? Emancipation Proclamation is blown way out of proportion. So there's two, right? It was not an amendment, right? Like I said, you know, slavery is written into the Constitution in 4 places. I'm not going to cite them all, right? Right? But it is in 4 places. Even if it were just in one, you have to have an amendment to the Constitution to get rid of slavery, right? So this is not an amendment. It wasn't even a law. All it was Lincoln saying, hey, our slaves stay slaves, but your slaves go free. Because I said so. And that's good enough for you. Because we're at war, and screw you. Right? I mean, that's what he's saying. The Emancipation Proclamation was really a strategic move. Right? One, it undermines the Southern economy and thus cripples the Southern war effort. I mean, what is your fundamental? I mean, that's strategy, right? The fundamental means of fighting a war, right? Well, it comes back to your economy, right? Increasing manpower with black units, right? That's another thing, another strategic manpower, right? You free these blacks, right? You say, hey, come on up here, man, and then you dress them in uniforms, you train them, and you get them to fight the Southerners. Short up alliances with border states, right? So I didn't think it was a big threat, major threat that they're gonna jump ship and go to the South if you say we're not we're not going to protect your slaves. But this protected their slaves. Our slaves stay slaves, right? All the border states, right? Slave states who wanted to stay in the Union, well, they get to keep their slaves, right? But you don't want to risk any chance they're going to. But I'm thinking, listen, their money bag is the North, right? They're not risking that no matter what. They'll have to make accommodations. But anyways, the Emancipation Proclamation would have no lasting effect beyond the war. All right, that is true. War ends, you don't have the 13th Amendment. What is the law on the books? Fugitive Slave Act. All those slaves, you said, hey, come on up here. Well, you probably, well, no, yes. Then you got to say, oh, crap. Well, sorry, but, uh, we had good intentions, right? We meant to, right? You got a big problem. You got some riotous, people here, right? You promise them something, they go up, they risk their lives, right? They get severe wounds, whatever, right? And now you're gonna screw them, right? Uh, and that's probably a bigger reason why. Okay, so that's why the second 13th Amendment had to be passed. Remember, the first 13th Amendment was a Corwin Amendment, right? However, it did get ratified because the war started. All right, so what I say is, people are not as noble and self-sacrificing as they would like to believe themselves. I mean, they want to believe that about themselves because it makes them feel good, right? That in itself is self-serving, feel-good stuff, right? They want to believe it because it makes them feel good, right? Here are some far more likely and real reasons why young men fought in the Union Army, right? You got to get away from this fairy tale stuff to preserve their union and save their country, to prevent the damn rebels from destroying their country, right? Young males are dumb and full of machismo, bravado, ego, especially when they get together, right? I mean, I was like that, right? You do some crazy, stupid stuff because you get with your buddies, right? And you're all bragging and telling, these big epic stories, whatever. Oh, I can go ski with my buddy, right? Hey, watch this, watch me, right? And then he's got to one up you, then you got to one up him, right? And you're it comes down to, man, you almost die sometimes, and you're doing stupid stuff. All right, all right. Plus, when you're young, you have an underdeveloped limbic system. This is a system that tells you to be cautious, hesitant, to create fear. Right? I mean, it has more function than that, but that has been shown to have underdevelopment in youth. That's why youth tend to be more risky. They're too young and stupid to know the sufferings and horrors of war. I mean, that's true. You go into war, you have all these ideas, maybe glory or whatever, that you're gonna get for yourself. You don't know how bad it's gonna be, right? Young males are reckless and don't think they'll die. It's always the other guy who gets it. Everyone thinks that, you know. They were too afraid not to go because army units were formed from communities for an able-bodied young male not to go when all others were going to fight. Right, would be social and economic suicide in that community. You'd be the only one there, right? All the other guys want to, and you're the sole person who's going to be a little, right? You're going to be an outcast, right? You're going to be the town coward, ostracized socially and economically, right? That person feared the yellow stain on his back whenever in public and forever, right? All right. So some went because they wanted to support their brothers and friends who were fighting, right? And I think out of all these motives, this is the most noble motive. The one noble motive. You want to support your brothers and friends, right? To win glory for themselves and make a name for themselves. You know what? Right? There's people who do this. And this absolutely just turns my stomach, makes me sick. Right? That people are willing to go kill other people to get a little glory for themselves. That's like sick. That is literally sick. Right? You just want to slap a person like this. Um, so I honestly don't believe humanity is as noble and self-sacrificing. Right? I believe people are thoroughly self-serving, self-promoting, self-preserving, and self-deluding to make themselves feel good. Right? That's what people do. Right? All these are reasons why people lie all the time. Right? Uh, but they never knew it. Why? Because in a lot of cases, in most cases, people lying is an automatic reflex response. It's like a knee jerk, right? You go to the doctor's office, he taps you on the knee, you knee, right? That's how people lie, just automatically, without giving them a second thought. And then you ask people, hey, how many of you are honest, right? And the vast majority is going to raise their hand. I'm honest. I don't tell lies, and they lie all the time, right? People lie all the time. One of the ways, and most often, they lie to themselves. They pick and choose what factor, right, to remember, what not to remember, what to throw out. Right? They structure their perceptions, and if they can't find a way of denying a fact, well, they'll make something up that's crazy and absurd, and they'll believe it because it makes it feel good. It's satisfying, and that's human nature. right? So are people noble or are they idios? Right? That's a Greek word. And what it means is, you're right, I said, well, what's common? Well, idios means the common man, right? You think it means idiot? Well, it does, right? The idea was the common man was both an idiot and, an amoral person, a totally self-serving person, right? Who's going to rationalize, cut corners, right? You know, do things to get what he wants, and then make himself feel like it was righteous, right? Find some way to like twist it so it's righteous. That's human nature, and that's what this war is about. Make it is like, oh, it was a righteous war. All right. Uh, there was a lot of proof that Union soldiers did not want to fight to free the slaves. There are mass desertions of Union soldiers who if they thought they're going to free the slaves, well, we're not going to fight to free the slaves. Screw it, we're deserting. There's mass refusal. So even if they did desert, we're saying we're not fighting, right, to free the slaves. There's mass refusals to be drafted, including, for example, a riot in New York City in which many innocent black people, 120 blacks were killed, many more beaten savagely, right, maybe to the edge of death, right, but they survived, right, and for what? Did they do anything? Was the war their policy, right? Was draft their policy? No, right? And that's how ignorant people are, right? So mass letters from parents of soldiers to Lincoln pleading reassurance that the boys were not fighting to free the slaves, but instead fighting to preserve the Union. All right, that's what they're all about. Bottom line, if you don't retain any of this, right? I just gave you a lot of stuff, right? I don't know. It's like what, right? If you don't retain any of this, at least remember that the Northern controlled Congress, including President Lincoln, did everything they could to protect and promote slavery in a desperate attempt to avoid war. Right? That is the exact opposite of fighting a war to free the slaves. Right? Now, I suspect liars may try to attack, claiming the North's motives changed after the start of the war. No, what matters is the start of the war, right? Because that shows what your motive is, right? Why they fought. Plus, the Northern Congress passed a Crittenden-Johnson resolution after the war started, right? Which resolved we're not going to fight this war to free the slaves. Plus, by the end of the war, the North itself barely passed the 13th Amendment, right? Even as the war is going on, right? It's almost over, right? They barely want to pass it, and Lincoln had to buy votes. Moreover, for the economic, intelligent, and elite of the North, okay, so these guys were against slavery, right? But that doesn't mean they gave a damn about the slaves, right? It's just like the Oregon Constitution, right? We don't want any slaves here, no black people. It's like Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, and Oregon all had laws barring blacks from coming into their state. Okay, they don't want slavery, but they don't want black people. Right. So eliminating slavery was not about freeing the blacks, but rather about instituting a nationwide wage-based economic system that was far superior for a modern industrial mass production, mass consumption economy. I read plenty of evidence that the anti-slavery Republican elites had little to no concern for the plight of the blacks. Right? They are more concerned about the economic system, which I'm going to try to explain when you get to Western expansion economics. I'll take a quick look here. Wage labor, one of the central elements of their system. All right, you need it to increase human incentive, motivation, energy, right? And maximize your utilization of your human resources, right? And you need wage labor to create disposable income so that people have money to buy things. That's D1, demand for final consumption, right? And that's going to drive increased consumption demand for manufactured goods, right? Right? And you got a manufacturing-based economy, industrial machine production, right? Producing a lot of goods. Well, you have to have people who are going to buy this, otherwise this all breaks down, right? Okay. All right, so next question is, uh, all right, if the North did not fight the Civil War to free the slaves, then why was it fought? Well, first of all, keep in mind, the North did not start the war, the South did. And there was no threat to slavery. This is proven. In fact, the North bent over backwards, did cartwheel, jumped through hoops, right, stood on their head to guarantee protection and promotion of slavery in order to avoid a war. That was a prime thing, right? Avoid break up the Union and a war. This is proven. But the South didn't go for it. That shows that slavery was just another cover story. Right? You think people don't have cover stories? You think people tell you the truth all the time? I mean, come on, right? Just as Orders of Councils was a phony cover story during the War of 1812, right? So the British rescinded it only 5 days after the war started, and it didn't budge the United States. So the legs were cut from under the excuses for war in both cases. To no effect. To no effect. Right? So slavery was not the South's real motive for secession, then what was, right? Now, to understand the real driving motive forces behind the United States Civil War, we must examine how the origin of the Civil War is rooted in the Industrial Revolution, which caused a divergence between the northern and southern economies, which led to opposite impacts of tariffs, economic boom for the North, and economic bust for the South. All right, and I imagine that this was attacked as like, oh, a bunch of economic mumbo jumbo gibberish. You don't know what he's talking about. Well, you don't know what I'm talking about, so you assume that there's nothing there. But okay. Um, Here is a quote from Palmer Colton. All right, and it's I I, I read this and like, okay, yeah, he's right, right. But I understood this before. I read Palmer Colton, right, right. But this is a very simple statement on it. The North and South became completely estranged. The Industrial Revolution had contrary effects on the two regions. It turned the South into an economic associate of Great Britain. An economic minion is what it did. The South became the world's chief producer of raw cotton for the Lancashire mills. The Southerners, living by the export of a cash crop and producing virtually no manufactures, wished to purchase manufactured goods as cheaply as possible. And it wasn't that simple. Hence, they favored free trade, especially with Great Britain. I mean, that's what's always said, but people aren't understanding the economics going on here. I mean, that's part of it. It's about inflationary pressure, right? But in the North, the Industrial Revolution led to the building of factories. Northern factory owners, usually backed by their workers, demanded protection from the inflow of British goods, with which no other country at the time could easily compete. That is true. Britain's dominating everyone as far as industrial manufacturing, driving everyone out of business. The North, therefore, favored a high tariff, which the South declared to be ruinous. All right, okay, so we just okay. The South declared that high tariff is ruinous, right? Well, at this point, you don't know why. I'm not going to explain the economics yet, right? Um, all right, so while this is a cogent insight and a nice summary, it is overly simplistic in its economic analysis. Economic analysis. All right. I therefore will provide a fuller economic analysis. However, I will not begin there. I fear most readers will find the economic analysis too abstract and thus not real, at least in their understanding, and thus not convincing. Right? Now, like I said, a lot of people can just point at it and say, "Oh, that's just a bunch of psychobabble," blah 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 blah. Right? I mean, it is in their head, right? Um, but okay. Therefore, I will begin with simple nuts and bolts. I'll begin with the North-South struggle over political power, which is it comes down to simple bean counting. I mean, surely people can understand this, right? So I'll start there. Before I begin, I must clarify who the South was. It was not all the people of the South. It was the rich elites who controlled political and economic power in the South. The top 1% in the South were twice as rich as the top 1% in the North. Think about it. The industrial financial barons in the North, Wall Street, whatever, right? These guys are twice as rich as the top guys in the North, right? They were super rich. They had super concentrated wealth when the rest of the population in the South was dirt poor, right? They were rich as kings, and they stood to lose the most with high tariffs, right? They're the ones who resisted, and they controlled political power, so they could. And they just got to throw on the masses of the people to use them, exploit them, and manipulate them into fighting the war. All right. So here's my outline, and then I'll take a break here. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is show how control of political power, which means essentially majority in Congress, right, determine control of legislative power, and how this determine control over economic fortunes. Boom or bust through tariffs, right? Make sure you got the president. He's got to sign bills into law, all right? But those bills have to be passed by Congress. That's where it starts. Show how the key battle line between North and South was a fight over tariffs. Explain that even if you don't understand the economics, it is plain to see that the South's fight against high tariffs meant that high tariffs were bad for them, right? It's not like, right, we got to fight these high tariffs. Why? Because they're too good for us. We can't have things too good for us. We want things bad for us. Of course they're fighting because it's bad for them, right? Show how tariffs, so if you don't understand economics, you can at least see that. Show how tariffs nearly led to a civil war in 1832. So a civil war almost occurred 30 years before. And it was over what? Slaves? It was over tariffs, right? Not paying federal taxes is sedition. You can't let a single state, South Carolina, not pay taxes, right? Well, what's going to happen if you let, South Carolina, we'll make you an exception. You don't have to pay federal taxes. What do you think all the other states are going to do? They're going to say, what the hell? We're not paying taxes, right? And then what do you got? Your government. How does your government exist without any revenues? Your government is done. All right. It's like, think of it, parents. They got a bunch of kids, right? It doesn't take much, brains here for these kids to figure it out. So one kid gets special treatment, gets a little get away with everything, right? What do the other siblings do? Why does he get away with it? And they're gonna act up. You can't do that. Show how the Southern resistance to North's Western expansion economic agenda was. Oh, wait a minute here. Oh, okay. Where are we at here? Okay, yeah. Show the evolutionary progression and the balance of political power between North versus South, from our national founding to the eve of the Civil War. So I'm going to try to show you how this evolved with different things that happened to our country, right? And by 1860, it was hardcore, one-sided shift in political power, right? With only the hopes of it getting worse for the one side, the South. It's only going to get worse for them. They knew they were done. Show how the Southern resistance to Northern Western expansion economic agenda was part of that struggle, right? Right. So I briefly explained this. The Western expansion economic agenda is going to increase Northern wealth, right? That's going to increase opportunities in the North, right? That's going to increase immigration to the North. That's going to increase the demographics, and that's going to increase the political power, which was already whacked and one-sided. It's only going to get worse, right? And I'll show you how it's going to get worse. Show how by 1860 the slave-based South's hope for regaining political power was a lost cause and would only get worse. This means the only hope of the Southern elites was to maintain their economic system that brought them great wealth would be to check out of the Union, which meant war. Show how the power elite in the South was tiny, right? Right? less than 1%, and could not fight the war for independence. Therefore, they had to rally the people behind the war to get them to fight. To get Southern men to fight, the elites would use one, fear mongering. That was the first thing, right? With the false threat that the North was going to free the slaves. Then, no such when no such threat existed in reality. All right, right. Look at the facts. Right? Don't just go with what everyone says. Right, which is social reality, which is retard reality. In reality, social reality is retard reality. I'm just saying it, right? But it's the dominant reality. It's what people believe, right? You know, various laws to corner white males in the South into fighting, right? So if they weren't going for this fear mongering, right, and a lot of not everyone was simple and gullible. There's some white males down there saying, "Man, this war is a slave plantation owner war. This is their thing. I'm not going to fight for them. I hate them. They're making me a sharecropper," right? Uh, so yeah, so if you're not going to fight it because of fear, well, they made all these laws to corral and corner all the males into fighting. Review how there was no real threat from the North to free the slaves. Right? Review how the North did all they could to protect and promote slavery in a desperate attempt to avoid war. They were doing the opposite. This proved the threat was false. Right? Explain how the Southern elites have a long history of using race and racism to manipulate the Southern masses. Right? This goes back to Bacon's revolt in 1676, 100 years before our Declaration of Independence. Right? It's old. Show the key legacy of the Civil War for the next 25 years, unleashing Western expansion economics. Then show how Western expansion economics was critical to. Well, it was an economic engine for the next 25 years. It caused a rapid acceleration of Indian wars and settlement of the West, settlement of U.S. Continental territory. Uh, the perceived economic necessity of the Spanish American War. So, I got to explain this. This is probably the most complex thing for me to explain out of all my wars, right? It's going to be tricky. I'll get to it. It may take a long time. Then go back to an explanation of the economics of tariffs, right? I'll finally go back, okay? And then I want to conclude the whole thing with an examination of history as a social force, right? All right, this is the larger big picture thing. Okay, so that's an introduction here. Next thing I'm going to get to is I'll look at how majority Congress leaks legislative power, tariffs legislation, southern, and then I'll get into tariffs. Okay, I'll get into the balance of power. All right, we'll stop there.